So we've all been given a topic. We kicked off with freedom last week, and the topic is the 3Ds. So we've all got a D of a preach this morning. So my topic this morning is freedom from doubt. And I just want to start by just telling you a little story of what I think really defines what doubt is. It says a trial lawyer was defending a man charged with murder. There was strong evidence pointing to guilt, but there was no corpse, there's no body. Knowing that it was his job to hold off a jury decision of guilty, the defense attorney resorted to using a trick in his closing argument. He stood looking as confident as he could and said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have a surprise for you. Within 1 minute, the person presumed dead in this case will walk into this courtroom." The lawyer then turned and looked at the courtroom door. The jurors were stunned and all looked eagerly towards the door. A full minute passed and nothing happened. Finally, the lawyer said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize to you for making a false statement. However, every one of you looked on with anticipation as you awaited the arrival of the person presumed dead in these proceedings. Therefore, I must ask you to deliver a verdict of not guilty, because there was reasonable doubt in every juror's mind as they looked at the courtroom door. The reasonable doubt is that anyone was actually murdered." He then sat down. The jury, now clearly confused, retired to deliberate. Within half an hour, the jury returned to the courtroom and delivered a verdict of guilty. The defense attorney was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears. He stood up and asked, "How in the world could you find this man guilty? Every one of you looked at the door and waited for the man presumed dead to walk into this very courtroom." The foreman of the jury said, "Oh yes, every one of us looked, but your client didn't." Do you know, this morning, if you want to be free, I've got 3 things that I've thought about. If we want to be free from doubt, we need to understand what doubt actually is. And you know, when I first thought about it, I thought, actually, it's obvious. It's the opposite of faith. It's unbelief. But actually, when I read more into it, I realised that actually it's not. There's a big difference between doubt and unbelief. Unbelief is the refusal to believe. It's the absence of faith. It's a deliberate decision to deny God. Whereas doubt is defined as a feeling of uncertainty, hesitation, or indecision. And actually, that was like a new revelation to me, actually. We believe wholeheartedly in Jesus, but you know, there are some times in our lives where actually we become a little bit uncertain about things. We hesitate about things. Some heroes of the faith that we read about had serious doubts. There was Moses, who certainly doubted that God could use him to lead the people out of Egypt. There was Elijah, doubted that God could really protect him from Jezebel. Gideon didn't know if God was going to live up to his promise. And John the Baptist, Jesus' own best friend, questioned whether he was actually the Messiah. And he said, "Of men born of a woman, there is no man greater than John." And Thomas, clearly a doubter, he says, "Unless I see his hands, the mark of the nails, and place my finger in the mark of the nails, and place my hand in his side, I will never believe." These people doubted God at some point in their lives. Thomas, but he was strengthened by his faith. He was strengthened through the doubt. As Jesus came to challenge him, through his doubt, he responded, "Lord, my God." Other version says, "My Master." Thomas clearly had his own revelation of who Jesus was in a personal way. And we've all been like Thomas, haven't we? We've all been at a point in our lives when we've actually doubted. We've actually become a bit hesitant about that and the calling about on our lives. But Jesus reminds us, blessed are those who believe and do not doubt. It's actually okay to doubt. There's a freedom in knowing that actually it's okay to doubt. But God does not intend for us to stay in our doubt. He wants to lead us into a greater understanding of who he is, his love for us, and who he has created us to be. Secondly, to be free from doubt, we need to recognize that when doubt will come. And you might think of different things here, but for me, I thought actually crisis will bring on doubt. We begin to question, "Lord, what's going on here? Really, what's happening? I just don't understand what's happening right now." Joseph, he was wrongly accused. He was thrown in prison. And he must have had some serious doubts. He must have questioned the plan of God on his life. But he just kept going, and he trusted in the Lord. He trusted in God that he would look after him, and he did. Joseph found himself in the crisis in the prison, but he got through the crisis. And later on we find that when he's in a position of power and authority, another crisis happens, and that's when the famine came. He had a word from God and he trusted God, but through the crisis, Joseph made a plan. And the word from God about the famine, he acted on the word. If Joseph didn't act on the word, Egypt would have been in devastation. People would have starved to death. He planned to store these 7 years of good crop in readiness for the 7 years of famine. And he actually used a bit of common sense. He had a word from God, used a bit of common sense, and put a plan into motion. What's your crisis today? You might not be in a crisis, but you might have been through a crisis. But it might be something that you want to ignore, something that you want to maybe brush under the carpet. But you know what God wants us to do is to face up to it, to challenge it, to learn from it, and to move on. It's in the crisis that doubt will creep in, but it's up to us to put the plan in motion and to keep moving forward. You know, just to illustrate that, when crisis of our own, a few years back, I remember when we literally had like 3 tins of beans left in the cupboard. We're like, God, what's going on? I know you can provide, but actually when you're in it, you do start to doubt. And Luke was talking to some friends in the church, and he was overheard by somebody else in the church, and that person came to me and said, you know, I understand, I've overheard what you're going through. I'd really love to help you. So they took us back to their house. They literally emptied the freezer, emptied the cupboards, filled the car up with food. And I just walked away going, God, how did I even doubt you? You know, it taught me, firstly, to humble myself and get rid of my pride. Okay, God, you want to provide through this. But also that I don't need to doubt because he is my provider. David wrote, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. I will praise the Lord who counsels me. Even at night my heart instructs me. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. And when we begin to doubt the word of the Lord, the way we bring freedom is to focus on God. If we choose to live in doubt, we're just going to lose our way. It's during these times when we are totally dependent on God, we are forced to put our faith into motion because actually we don't know what else to do. And thirdly, if we want to be free from doubt, we need to know how to be free. And I thought of a couple of things here. Firstly, we need to change our perspective. We need to change our perspective and focus on Christ. Brian Houston says, what you focus on in life determines whether or not you'll experience peace in your heart. The Bible gives us clear instructions on how to live in peace. And I think here, for me, the key is worship. When we start to look at Jesus, as we've been singing this morning, how good he is, when we focus on him and magnify him and make him big, our doubt will just be insignificant. It will sink because we've changed perspective and looking at Jesus instead of looking at the doubt. It's like mountains, isn't it? We talked about mountains this morning. You know, that's all you can see. You can't see your way around it. You can't see your way over it. But actually, when we change perspective, we keep moving, following Jesus. We look in the rearview mirror and see the mountain behind us. As we keep moving forward, it's just going to sink into insignificance. And that faith is the answer there. You know, all we need is a size of a mustard seed to keep moving forward. Just tiny little steps is better than just keeping still and not moving, to live free. And hey, you know what? Why would we be called overcomers in the word if there was nothing to overcome? We would never be called conquerors. If there was nothing to conquer, without the mountains, we couldn't use our faith. So when doubt starts to creep in, remember the word of the Lord where it says that his strength is made perfect in our weakness, that our faith will be refined in the fire. So just to wrap it all up here, when we focus on doubt, we are actually moving away from God. But freedom is to draw near to him. So as we worship him, as we keep our eyes focused on him, as we magnify him and see how great he is and how good he is, it will just the doubt will seem insignificant. Hold on, hold tight to the promises that God has given you. Hold tight to the dreams that are in your heart, because he wants to complete it in your life. There is freedom in being honest about your doubts, actually. There is freedom, and it's actually okay to admit that you're doubtful in this situation. But God doesn't intend for us to stay in the doubt. His intention for us is to live a life knowing his grace, knowing his love, and who he has created us to be. Amen.
Great. So mine is discouragement. So I guess it's just a day-to-day thing, isn't it? Discouragement. I guess that we all feel it. And I hear you say that actually it's just a normal thing, and it's maybe just even a natural thing, perhaps. Well, do you know what? It doesn't feel nice, does it, when we get discouraged? It doesn't. It's a horrible feeling. And as we heard from Yvonne last week, that freedom feels great, doesn't it? Freedom is fantastic. So I want to give you some keys on freedom from discouragement today. So some discouragements can be massive, and some discouragements can only be small, and they don't last forever. So a couple of years ago, just before me and Andy came to this church, about 7 or 8 years ago now, me and Andy were going to take a job up at a Bible school in the Lake District, and it was going to be fantastic. It was like this chocolate box dream. The Bible school was in the foothills of the Lake District. It was on this beautiful farm landscape. There were some perks of the jobs involved, so we had a cottage on site that was going to be ours. We were going to take a job as mission coordinators, and I had it all planned out in my mind. It was, for me, it was like, this is a God thing. It's definitely the next thing in our life. It's going to be fantastic. And I applied for university up there, and I got a place, and it was all going through. And then one day we just got a phone call to say, actually, we've offered the job to somebody else. And that was a huge discouragement. I was just like, what? I thought you were calling us to this. So that was a massive discouragement. A small discouragement would be like when your baby's been sleeping through the night for the past couple of weeks and then decides that it's playtime at 4 o'clock in the morning. Hello! That is not good. But you know what? Some discouragement can actually be really, really good for us. And I've made some observations about discouragement. And the first observation, discouragement generally happens when we are, number one, when we're tired. So your defenses are lowered when you're tired. And I know when I get off a night shift, the enemy plays massive on my mind because I'm so tired. I think awful things. I think terrible things are going to happen. My mind just goes crazy. Things seem bleaker than they really are. This often occurs when you're halfway through a major project and you get tired. Number two, when you get frustrated. You get really discouraged when you're frustrated. So when the unfinished tasks pile up, it's natural to feel overwhelmed. And when trivial matters and the unexpected interrupts you. And when and prevent you from accomplishing the things that you really need to do. And I feel this, because I'm in a season where my kids are little, and I'm feeling like I'm so frustrated that I can't do all the things I want to do because I've got to stay at home and feed the baby. But I get like that all the time. And that's when you can get discouraged massively. Failure. Sometimes, our best laid plans fall apart. Just like my plans were to go and live in my lovely little cottage in the Lake District. Sometimes they just fall apart. The project collapses, the deal falls through, nobody turns up to the event. We've all been there. How do you react? Do you give in to self-pity? Do you blame others? One man said, just when you think that you can make ends meet, somebody moves the ends. Okay? So that is discouraging. So, and the fourth observation that I made is fear. So fear is behind more discouragement than we'd like to admit, right? The fear of criticism. Oh, what will they say if I do this? The fear of responsibility. What if I just can't handle it? And the fear of failure. What if I blow it and it just doesn't work? This can cause a major onset of the blues. So there's a story in the Bible in Nehemiah 4 where the people of Judah decide to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And this is a colossal task. If you read that account, you will understand that the walls were absolutely crumbled to pieces. And there were huge, massive, big, like mountains of rubble everywhere. And it was a huge task to rebuild these walls. But the people of Judah felt all these 4 things. They felt tired. You know, they went to Nehemiah and said, we're tired. It's just a massive task. They got frustrated. They got criticized and attacked from different people and different peoples who said, you can't do this, and we're going to attack you if you do this, because they were clearly jealous that they were doing it and they weren't. But they were getting attacked and criticized from all sides. They were saying that they were going to go to war on them if they did it, and they were feeling tired and they were feeling down, and they were feeling like they were failing because the task was so big, and they were fearful, and they were scared for their lives as well, and they're scared for their families. And they went through all of those 4 things. You know what? It can happen in the natural as well as the spiritual. So we get discouraged every day over things, you know, like when your car breaks and stuff like that. And we get discouraged with God sometimes. I was discouraged with God over the fact that we didn't get that position in the Bible school. But you know what? It taught me a massive lesson. It taught me that, you know, it can strengthen us. That discouragement can strengthen you for the next stage of your life. And I hear you say, well, why do we need freedom from it if it can strengthen us for the next season of our life? Because you know what? Discouragement can stop you from moving forward. Discouragement can stop you from moving into the promises of God. It can stop you from being the person that God has called you to be. You know what? For some of you in this room, God has got some massive laid plans on your life. And if you have been discouraged, you know what? There's that old saying about once bitten and twice shy. And if you get discouraged over something, you feel like you can't do what God has called you to do because you are discouraged and you're once bitten. So you need to choose today not to be twice shy. And that is why you need freedom from this today, freedom from discouragement. And this is how you get it right. Those of you who know me know that this is massive on my heart right now. You've got to choose to respond to your discouragement and not react to your discouragement. You know, I am one of them people who react to everything. Oh my goodness. I'm like that all the time. But respond. Okay, so God, I've been discouraged. How can I respond to this? What are you trying to teach me about this? You know what? Me and Andy decided to respond to that discouragement of not getting that position. And we came here. And look what is going on in this place. We've got a fantastic new campus starting. We've got a fantastic new building. We've got a food bank. We've got kids clubs, holiday clubs, tiny tots. You know what? This place is reaching the community. And we are so well positioned here. And God taught us a massive lesson through that discouragement. So choose to respond and not react. The people of Judah responded. They didn't react, and the Bible says that they held a spear in one hand and they did the work of the walls with the other hand. You know? And they're absolutely fantastic. They responded. They didn't react to their opposition. So the cure, respond, not react. Rest your body. You know, it gets hard sometimes. Rest. If you're tired, rest. Reorganize your life. You know, you're frustrated. Let's sit down. Let's think about all the things you've got going on in your life right now. Okay, let's reorganize it and resist. Resist that thought. Resist that discouragement. Oh, I'm once bitten. No, resist it. Resist it today. Do you know what? We've got powerful minds, really powerful minds. My mind is my own worst enemy. Those of you who know me know my mind plays tricks on me all the time. Okay, I am like, you can't do this, Janine. You are a horrible mother. You are a horrible wife. You're a horrible Christian. You're a horrible nurse. You know, I get that all the time. My mind is my own worst enemy. But you know what? We have got Jesus Christ. We've got Jesus Christ, and he has given you the godly power today to choose to resist when you get discouraged, to choose to resist when that little seed of thought gets in your mind and says, you can't do this. You know, you can choose that today. The Bible says, take captive of the thoughts, of your thoughts. And just one last little story as I finish up here. When I was at Cherish last year, there was a lady speaking about a story when she was on her way to a conference. She was on the way to the airport in the dead of night in downtown New York, and she had her 1-year-old son in the car with her, and her dad was driving. And she came to a stoplight, and it's like 3 a.m, and a carjacker tried the door. Okay, he came to the door and he tried the door. Scariest thing. And her response was to say to her dad, drive, go. And that really spoke to me because I'm my own worst enemy in my head. You know, when you get that thought of discouragement and you feel that discouragement, you need to run from that as quick as you can. Get away from it. Just run. And that spoke to me so hard, and I have took that captive in my mind so many times this year. Just run, go, drive as quick as you can from that discouragement and that thought. Rick Warren says that discouragement is a choice. Liz.
Freedom from disapproval. We all like to be approved of. Whether with Tiny, Beth, she was here this morning, just standing on there, and I was talking to her. She's looking up at me, grinning, because I was approving of her. We all like approval. Lois, my daughter, texted me a few years ago and said, "Mum, ring me." And I thought, oh no. I rang her and she said, Mum, what do you think to Joseph Willis? She wanted my approval of the man who is now who is providing me with my grandchild. We all want approval. My kids, when they got to that stage in church where they didn't want to sit with mum, they wanted to sit with their friends because it's cooler. If they were making a noise or playing up, whatever, they knew the look of disapproval. They knew what it meant because it's there. It's within us. We all want to be approved of. And disapproval, we need freedom from it. Yeah. We need to know. It's in 2 Corinthians 10 it says, "For it is not the one who commends himself who is approved, but the one whom the Lord commends." You know, I looked at what disapproval means, and I've written my notes massively so that I didn't have to try and put my specs on too much. But I still have to because I still can't read my writing. It's not because of the size of it, it's because I can't read my writing. Disapproval is a feeling of disliking something or what someone else is doing. It's an inclination to withhold approval. You know, we can withhold it from somebody. They can have done a really good job. But, you know, we think, I'm not telling them. Why would I tell them that? You know, we can actually choose to withhold it and give them okay. But you know what? We should be approving. We should be approving. Because we do that act of disapproving, which is condemning people, criticising, disliking, disfavour, putting them in the doghouse. You know, sometimes we don't ask for approval, but we actually receive disapproval. And there are quite a lot of examples in the Bible of people that didn't seek approval, but actually got disapproval. When Leah started talking about Joseph, I thought, hey, up, she's pinching me points. You know, his brothers did not approve of him at all. Hence he got sold into slavery. It's David, his brothers as well didn't approve of him. You know, he went to the front line of the battle. What are you doing here? Why have you come? You little scallywag type idea. They didn't approve of him. Yeah. Saul, when he got converted, the church didn't approve of him. Don't trust you, don't approve of you. And then, of course, Jesus, the whole of his life on earth, he was totally disapproved of by the Pharisees and the Sadducees and anybody else that thought, not sure, totally disapproved. And so there's a lot of people I could have gone down the avenue of who we're going to look at. How we're going to talk about freedom from disapproval. So I decided to pick 3 women. Because I'm a woman. In John chapter 12, we've got the story where Mary anoints Jesus' feet with that really expensive perfume and then wipes them with her hair. What have you done that for? Why have you done that? We could have sold that. We could have given it all to Food Bank. What are you doing? And what did Jesus say? Verse 7, let her alone. Leave her alone. What she's done for me. You know, we can see things happening around and think, oh, that was a stupid thing to do. Why have I done that? But you know, Jesus says, let her alone. Let him alone. He's done that for me. And then we've got, in John chapter 4, we've got the woman at the well. And she was disapproved of because of, one, where she came from. She came from Samaria. It's like coming from Richmond when we live in Handsworth. And also because of her lifestyle. You know, she'd already had a number of husbands. That's why she was at the well in the middle of the day, and it was just her. Because she was disapproved of. You can't come with us. Go on your own. But you know what? Jesus didn't disapprove of her. He talked to her and he gave her the answers to life. Not just life here and now, but life eternal. And then we've got Mary and Martha. Sisters. I've got a sister. And we're like chalk and cheese. You wouldn't put us together at all in any shape, size or form. And Mary and Martha were a bit like that. Martha was the one that was busying around doing everything. And Mary was sat at the feet of Jesus, listening and soaking in everything. And Martha was not impressed. Look, tell her to come and help me. Tell her to come and do. And Jesus said to her, Mary has chosen what is better. Mary has chosen what is better. You know, sometimes we rush and race around doing all sorts of things. And actually all Jesus wants is for you to be. He wants you to be in his presence. He wants you to be with him. You know, a long time ago we used to sing a song. I'm not going to sing it to you, so panic not. Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him, there's no other. Jesus is the way. You know, freedom from disapproval. We need to spend time with him because it's his approval that we need. You know, as we listen to him and hear what he's got to say and act on what he's telling us to do, we will then get his approval. We spend time. Mary worshipped him when she anointed his feet with that ointment. She worshipped him. You know, Mary sat and listened to him. She took in the words of life. The woman at the well, she actually received water that just quenched her thirst forever and ever. You know, that's all we have to do. Is just spend time in his presence. Just spend time with him. Because if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. If the Son sets you free, it's all about him. And you know, if we've got him as number one in our lives, we won't be seeking for approval from others. We won't be worried about disapproval because it's the approval from him that makes the difference. God bless you.